Together, we'll begin deep underground in the dark shafts of medieval Europe, imagining the lives of those who dug and sweated in suffocating tunnels. The men, women, and even children who went down into the earth, carving away at rock and soil, seeking the metals and minerals that fueled kingdoms and empires. So, let us begin. Breathe deeply, allow your mind to relax, and imagine yourself descending into the world beneath the surface. The earth is waiting, as it has always waited, dark and patient, holding secrets in its stone. The year is perhaps the 13th century, somewhere in the rolling hills of Saxony or the rugged valleys of Bohemia. The sun is just rising outside, but you will not see much of it today. Instead, you take a step forward into the shaft, where a chill creeps over your skin, and where the air is already thick with the smell of damp earth and faint smoke from a torch. Your life as a miner is a rhythm of darkness. Each day, before dawn, you gather with others, and together you descend into the ground. The tools are simple: a heavy hammer, a wedge of iron, a crude pick. For lighting, only small lamps, fueled with tallow or pine splinters flames, that flicker weakly against the encroaching dark. The walls are rough, damp to the touch, leaving traces of mud and clay on your fingertips. It is a hard place to breathe. With every strike of iron against rock, fine dust floats into the air, almost invisible, yet coating your lungs with each shallow breath. Many miners develop what people later call miner's lung. You would feel it slowly, your chest tightening, your breath becoming shorter year by year. But for now, you simply cough and keep working. The tunnels are low, forcing you to crouch or crawl. Imagine pressing your shoulders against the cold stone, wriggling forward with only a tiny flame ahead of you. The silence is broken only by the sound of picks striking, the echo of rock giving way, and the faint drip of water seeping through cracks. From time to time, you hear the dull groan of the earth settling, always a reminder that the ceiling above you may not hold forever. Accidents are frequent. Wooden supports groan and crack, and sometimes the walls collapse without warning. Sudden caving can trap or bury workers. Yet even when the shaft holds steady, danger is constant. Underground water seeps in and floods passages. Poisonous gases, though not always understood, sometimes collect in pocket lamps, flicker, and then the air is gone. You might not understand why men collapse, but you learn to fear the invisible breath of the earth. Pay is small. Often, you are not even paid in coins, but in a share of ore or in credit at the company's store. Families are tied to the mine, generation after generation. Children as young as 10 are sent to carry baskets of stone or to hold lamps for their fathers. Women, too, sometimes work at the surface, washing and sorting the ore. The labor of the whole family is consumed by the mountain, and yet life continues. At midday you pause, unwrapping a crust of bread, perhaps a piece of salted pork if you are lucky, and a flask of weak ale to wash away the dust. There is little conversation in the tunnels. Voices echo strangely in the dark, and most men are too tired to speak. The rhythm of your pick against stone, the creak of the wooden beams, the dim flame of your lamp, this is the soundscape of your day. Outside, in the village near the mine, the evidence of this underground world is everywhere. Heaps of discarded stone pile up, and streams run black with residue. The houses are small, roofs sagging under soot, and the air smells faintly of smoke and iron. At night, when you finally emerge from the shaft, the sky seems impossibly bright. Yet your eyes strain to adjust after so many hours in the gloom. Your body aches, your hands are blistered, and the dust clings to your hair and clothes. Still tomorrow, and the day after that, the rhythm begins again. Few miners live long. Injuries and illnesses claim many in their 30s or 40s, yet the work never stops. For the ore you bring up from the darkness is wealth to someone else's wealth, for princes, merchants, and kings. As you drift into this imagined life, consider how far removed it is from modern comfort. No electric lights, no machines to bear the weight, no safety protections, only human hands, iron tools, and the stubborn determination to carve metal from stone. The rhythm of mining is one of endless struggle against darkness, against breathless air, against the silent pressure of the earth itself. And yet, despite all this hardship, There is a strange constancy to it, a cycle that seems to stretch endlessly. Day after day, pick against rock, lamp against shadow, cough against dust. This was the miner's world. Now that we have descended into the shafts of medieval Europe, let us drift further through time and across the ocean to another mining world, one that became legendary for its scale, its wealth, and its devastating human cost. Imagine yourself standing at the base of a vast, reddish mountain in the high plains of what is today Bolivia. The air is thin here at over 4,000 meters above sea level. The winds are sharp and dry, carrying dust across the barren landscape. This is Cerro Rico, the rich mountain of a place so abundant in silver that it reshaped global economies and altered the course of history. The story begins in the mid-16th century when Spanish explorers learned of the mountain's riches. Silver had long been known in the Andes, used by the Inca for ritual and adornment, but the scale of was unlike anything seen before. For the Spanish crown, it was as though a mountain made of wealth itself had been discovered. Soon, miners, thousands of them, were sent into its slopes. The mountain became riddled with tunnels, shafts, and chambers. Unlike the small-scale mining villages of medieval Europe, grew into one of the largest cities in the world at the time, with tens of thousands of inhabitants. Silver poured out in staggering quantities, shipped across oceans, transformed into coins that circulated in markets from Seville to Beijing. But for those who worked the mountain, life was nothing like the glittering image of wealth. The labor was grueling. Indigenous people, under a system called the meta, were forced to leave their homes and villages to serve months at a time in the mines. Imagine yourself once again in a dark shaft, but this time at an even higher altitude, where breathing is harder, where the passages are longer and more treacherous. The miners dug with primitive tools, just as in medieval Euro picks, and hammers striking against hard stone. But here, the dangers multiplied. The tunnels of war deeper, hotter in some places, freezing in others, filled with dust and the smell of sulfur from smelting furnaces. Cave-ins were frequent and accidents common. Many miners perished underground, their bodies swallowed by the mountain itself. Above ground, the process of extracting silver required mercury, substance that, though useful, poisoned the air and seeped into the bodies of those who handled it. Smelters filled the city with smoke, and the rivers carried mercury residue downstream. The consequences would linger for centuries, yet still the silver flowed. Ships laden with bars of the metal crossed the Atlantic, their holds creaking under the weight. In Europe, the Spanish crown financed wars, palaces, and empires with this wealth. In Asia, the silver became the standard currency, fueling trade networks that stretched across oceans. The coins minted from its ore bore the mark of a mountain that few in the wider world would ever see, yet whose riches they depended on. The city of itself was a paradox. At its height, it was a bustling place, with markets full of goods brought from around the world. Llamas and mules carried or through its streets, while merchants haggled over prices. There were churches gilded with silver and houses where officials lived in relative luxury. And yet, only steps away, miners stumbled out of the shafts, exhausted, coughing, and hungry. Consider for a moment the contrast. The wealth of kings, the glitter of coins, the beauty of silver chalices and ornaments all depended on the endless rhythm of men digging in darkness. Much like the miners of medieval Europe, but here multiplied 1,000-fold. A whole mountain was consumed, its heart carved away, its riches flowing outward, while its workers remained trapped in hardship. The people have came to speak of the mountain with awe and dread. It gave life to the city, yet it also claimed countless lives. There is a legend that, if all the silver taken from Cerro Rico were gathered together, it could form a bridge from South America to Spain. And if all the bones of the miners who died in its shafts were gathered, they could form a bridge back again. The boom-off was not only about silver, it was about the rise of a global system. The mountain's wealth fueled empires, shifted balances of power, and linked continents in trade. Yet, as always, at the base of it all were the miners. The men with calloused hands and tired lungs, bent under the weight of stone, struggling to breathe in the thin air, their lives given to the mountain. Today, the city still stands, and the mountain still looms above it, scarred by centuries of digging. Even now, miners descend into its tunnels, continuing the work of generations before them. The mountain is smaller now, hollowed out. Yet its story lingers as a reminder of how much of history was built upon the silent toil of those underground. And so, we leave. From the solid reality of silver, we now turn our gaze towards something less tangible, yet equally enduring, a legend of mines that may never have existed at all, but which have captured human imagination for centuries. From the very real mountain, of where silver flowed like rivers into the hands of kings and emperors, we now move into another kind of story. A story of whispers and speculation, of explorers and archaeologists chasing after shadows. A story not of what was found, but of what might have been. This is the enduring mystery of King Solomon's mines. Imagine for a moment the land of ancient Israel, nearly 3,000 years ago. The biblical King Solomon, famed for his wisdom and wealth, is said to have ruled over a prosperous kingdom. His court, according to the scriptures, dazzled visitors from afar. Gold and silver were plentiful, precious stones adorned his halls. And even the cups from which his servants drank were said to be of pure gold. Where did this wealth come from? The Bible mentions ships sailing to faraway lands, returning with treasures of ivory, apes, and peacocks. It also speaks of mines, though never with precision. Later generations of readers, captivated by the image of Solomon's abundance, began to imagine that somewhere, hidden in the earth, lay vast reserves of gold and silver, his secret source of fortune. For centuries, scholars, travelers, and dreamers have tried to connect real landscapes with this idea. Some pointed to the copper mines of Timnah, in the desert of southern Israel. Here the earth bears the scars of ancient mining, shafts cut deep into sandstone, furnaces where copper was smelted in great quantities. Archaeologists have found remnants of tools, fragments of pottery, and traces of a thriving industry dating back to the time of Solomon's reign. Could it be, some asked, that these were his mines? Others turned their eyes further afield. The stories of Ophir, a mysterious land mentioned in the Bible as a source of gold, have been tied to Arabia, to India, even to the coast of Africa. In the late 19th century, when European explorers moved deeper into southern Africa, they encountered ancient ruined stone walls, enigmatic towers, and evidence of mining. To their imagination, it seemed plausible that these might be the fabled mines of Solomon, long lost but not forgotten. It was at this moment in history that fiction and speculation intertwined. In 1885, the writer H. Rider Haggard published King Solomon's Mines, a novel of adventure in which daring explorers set out to find the hidden treasure of the biblical king. The story was fictional, but it captured the public's imagination. Suddenly, the idea of vast, undiscovered mines buried deep in Africa became not just a scholarly theory, but a cultural legend. The novel blurred into reality for many. Explorers claimed to search for the mines, hoping to uncover gold, diamonds, or other treasures. Expeditions were launched, maps were drawn, and local ruins were studied. The stone structures at Great Zimbabwe, in particular, became a focus of speculation. Built centuries before European arrival, these grand stone enclosures and towers seemed mysterious to foreign eyes, who linked them, wrongly, to Solomon's fabled wealth. In truth, archaeology has shown that Great Zimbabwe was the work of local African civilizations, who created remarkable centers of trade and culture. The wealth of King Solomon, meanwhile, remains tied more to legend than to evidence. The copper mines of Timnah reveal a real industry, yes, but not the golden caverns of myth. The mountains of southern Africa hold rich veins of minerals, but their connection to Solomon is tenuous at best. And yet, the mystery endures. Because sometimes, what matters most is not what was truly there, but what people believed might be. The dream of hidden mines of treasure waiting to be uncovered reflects a timeless human fascination with the earth and its secrets. The darkness underground has always invited stories. In those stories, miners are not ordinary laborers with picks and lamps, but guardians of fortune, keepers of something vast and dazzling. As you imagine these so-called mines, you might picture yourself walking through a dry desert valley, where the rocks glow red in the sun. You descend into a narrow shaft, torches lighting the walls. Around you are echoes of legends, some true, some imagined. Perhaps you see veins of copper shining faintly. Perhaps nothing at all. And still the thought persists. Somewhere hidden deeper could lie the treasures of Solomon himself. In this way, the mystery of King Solomon's mines is less about a physical place than about the human desire to link wealth with wonder. The mines are symbols of hidden abundance, of power drawn from the depths of the earth, and of the endless quest to find what lies just beyond reach. And so, from the darkness of legend, we return once more to the surface. From miners who toiled and explorers who dreamed, we now shift our gaze to those who reap the rewards. For not all who lived by mining faced dust and danger. Some sat above it all, in halls filled with laughter and candlelight, dining on the very wealth torn from the ground. We have lingered in the tunnels of medieval miners, we have climbed the slopes of, and we have wandered through the half-light of legend in search of King Solomon's fabled wealth. Now, let us rise into another world entirely, a world of candlelit halls, where the silver and gold wrenched from the earth was transformed into comfort, status, and splendor. Imagine stepping into the home of a mining baron in early modern Europe. Outside, the air is thick with the smoke of smelting furnaces, the clatter of wagons hauling ore, and the fatigue of ordinary laborers trudging home. But within the walls of the baron's mansion, another rhythm unfolds. The hall is broad, its beams heavy with carved wood, polished to a soft gleam. Chandeliers of iron and glass hang above, their candlelight shimmering on silver plates made from the very metal drawn out of the ground by miners working in darkness. The tables are long, draped with fine cloth, and upon them rest dishes of roasted meats, baskets of warm bread, and goblets filled with spiced wine. Here the rhythm of life is not a miner's cough, but the soft murmur of conversation. Wealthy guests gather in velvet and brocade, discussing trade contracts, royal politics, and the latest shipments of ore. They lean back in carved chairs, their hands glittering with rings, their belts heavy with ornament. Where the miner's lamp barely flickered, here the glow of dozens of candles fills the room with golden warmth. At such banquets, the food was not only nourishment, it was a performance of wealth. Imagine platters of game birds, glazed with honey, their aromas mingling with herbs. Bowls of fruit imported from distant lands, apples from warmer valleys, figs carried along trade routes. Trays of sweet pastries, rare spices sprinkled on top, transformed the end of the meal into a display of luxury. Even the very act of drinking carried meaning. Silver goblets caught the candlelight, their rims cool against the lips. Wine was poured generously, and toasts echoed through the room, to prosperity, to family, to the mines that made it all possible. While miners underground shared crusts of bread and sips of weak ale, the barons above enjoyed vintage wines and delicacies from abroad. Yet, beneath the glitter, the connection was inescapable. Every silver plate, every shining cup, every coin counted and exchanged each, one had its roots in the same darkness we have imagined before. The banquets were built upon the labor of countless hands, upon the steady rhythm of picks against rock, upon the breath of men straining in tunnels where no music or laughter was heard. Sometimes the miners themselves were brought up into these halls not as guests, but as performers of loyalty, paraded in front of nobility to remind the elite where their fortunes began. Most of the time, though, the world's never touched. The miner's day ended in a small wooden cottage, while the baron's ended with a chamber filled with tapestries and feathered bedding, and so we see the full arc. From the tunnels where miners struggled, through mountains that fueled empires, through legends of treasure that never quite existed, to the banquets where wealth was displayed in shimmering light. The story of mining is one of contrast of shadows and brightness, of labor and leisure, of lives short and long. As we end this journey, allow yourself to return slowly to the present. The miners of medieval Europe, of and of legend, are long gone, but the traces of their labor remain in coins and cups, in stories and ruins, in the very history that shaped our modern world. Mining was, and still is, one of the most difficult forms of work. It asks for courage in darkness, strength against the earth, and resilience in the face of danger. Most of those who mined did not live in wealth, and yet their efforts sustained it for others. Now, as you settle in your bed, far from tunnels, far from dust, far from flickering lamps. You might reflect on the contrast. You lie in comfort, in a place lit by gentle light or softened into darkness by choice. Your breath is steady, your body at ease. Let the miner's rhythm fade into the distance, the picks against rock, the creak of timbers, the murmur of banquets far above. Let them dissolve into silence. Allow yourself to rest, to breathe deeply, to drift. The story is complete. The earth has closed around it, and for tonight, there is nothing more you need to do. Sleep well.